What's up, everybody? Doin here, back again to finally do a deck video, which I haven't done in freaking forever. So what's up, everybody? If you don't know who I am, my name is Doin. I cast Legends of Runeterra, routinely doing the online league series on the weekends on my Twitch channel, Doin GG. So if you want to go ahead and check that out, go for it. I will be doing a fight night later today as well, so if you want to go ahead and check that out over on Giant Slayer's channel, definitely go for it. But without further ado, we got some new cards, we got some new decks, and I am super excited to go over these. So the one I'm going to be doing today is Ezreal Kennen. It's been all over Twitter. Everybody's been talking about it. This thing is so good. Reminds me of the Karma Ezreal decks of old. So definitely been having a blast with this one. It's probably the deck I've played the most since the cards have released because it just seems absolutely busted. Everybody's worried about Poppy. Forget Poppy. We got Ezreal Kennen. So let's go ahead and look at the deck itself, and then we're going to get into some gameplay as well. Alright, so here we go. Ezreal Kennen. If you guys have seen some of my older deck videos, I'm going to organize this a little bit better this time around. So we're going to start with the win condition. What the heck is the win condition of this deck? Well, as is every Ezreal deck, typically, it's going to be Ezreal. But more specifically, you want to get multiple Kennens on board with Mark of the Storms being generated for Ezreal, right? So you generate Mark of the Storm every time a Kennen is summoned. If it's a leveled Kennen, you can get 3 in 1 turn from summon, attacking, and then having it blocked, right? That's 3 targets. And, 2 damage and a mark onto something else, right? Insane, right? You have an Ezreal on board with this. You can do a ton of damage in 1 turn. Very easy to end the game in either 1 turn or that turn, and then going into the next turn, just refreshing that mana and having a, burst spells and stuff like that. So, very, very awesome, fun, cool win condition. Very similar to Karma Ez, except now you're not, having to rely on Karma leveling up on turn 10. Now, with that said, there is a kind of really obscure win condition that doesn't happen at all, really, but it does. I had it happen to me once. If you don't find Ezreal, because Ezreal levels really easy. You're never really going to not level Ezreal. But the problem is sometimes finding Ezreal, right? And if you don't, and you kind of can't really close out the game. This deck doesn't have a way to close out without Ezreal. It just doesn't. There's no really alternate win con. So the only thing you can really do is use units like, you can see Shadow Assassin here. You have Twin Disciplines. There is really weird instances where you can kind of poke damage at your opponent's face because you might have multiple Kennens going in for attacks. Generally, you might be able to go pretty wide early on in the game. And if you're able to poke in 8 damage or so, get your opponent down to 12, you might be in a spot later on in the game where you can get multiple Shadow Assassins poking elusive damage, and then possibly even go all in on any unit, maybe an elusive Shadow Assassin, but for that matter, any unit, with multiple Twin Disciplines. I remember specifically ending a game with 2 Twin Disciplines onto a Shadow Assassin. That's 10 damage, right? And you have a lot of protection for those units too, and Notify and Deny. So you also have Sanin, which we'll talk about later, which also buffs the field if you do have a wide elusive field. So just another thing to take into consideration. So, all right. So core combos. This is where this deck is fun. The combos and the interactions, but core combos. So first thing what we got to keep an eye out on, and what you guys are looking to do, is Kennen plus recalls. Kennen loves to be recalled. Go figure. Obviously you need to summon Kennen 5 times to get his level up as well. So that's, one of the reasons why you're going to want to recall Kennen. Retreat and recall are really used as protection though, right? You don't want to be playing these proactively typically unless your opponent is, let's say, exhausted in mana and you're going into your next turn being able to have a leveled Kennen on board. If the last action on your opponent's attack token is them having no mana and you're playing retreat to get the last Kennen played and level Kennen, going into your next attack token turn, great. More power to you. Go for it. Especially if you have a Wayfinder or something like that. You also have Homecoming and Will of Ionia. I'm actually thinking about taking Homecoming out. Or sorry, taking Will of Ionia out for Homecoming. I actually think this is better, believe it or not. Just flat out in this deck than Will of Ionia. Will's lost a lot of play lately anyways. It's not the most amazing card. Jeez, remember when this was 5 mana because we thought it was broken? Also, Eye of the Dragon with Sustain. Obviously any deck Lee Sin players know this. Keep your Eye of the Dragon on board. Generate those Dragonlings. They will keep you into the game. Especially with Kennen, it is ridiculously easy to get 2 spells played every turn. It's so easy. In the retreats. Like, everything in your deck is 2 spells. You'll easily get it. Also, neat little thing here is one of the reasons why this card works so freaking great with this deck. Dragonlings, it's the same unit every time it's summoned. So guess what? Summon 5 of these bad boys. You're leveling Kennen up hyper fast. There is actually a faster way to level Kennen up, which I'll go over in a second. I actually have a little clip of a game that I played, which I'll show you guys, where I had Kennen leveled on turn 5, like ridiculously easy. It's like having the nuts hand, which we'll go over a little bit later. But summon 5 Dragonlings, you also level Kennen. So something to keep an eye out on with Eye of the Dragon here. Eye out on Eye. Okay, never mind. So card interactions is what we're gonna go through next. Just kind of like some of the core interactions of specific cards. So one of the most crucial things to understand, which can be hard at first, especially for a new player, but even an experienced player playing Kennen for the first time, is understanding and really knowing. I know this seems stupid. You can only play one champion at a time, because you will always have multiple Kennens. Or not always, but generally speaking, you're going to find yourself with multiple Kennens in hand. I'm pretty sure always. And it was weird. The first couple of games I played with this deck, I'm like, yeah, I'll just like recall the second one that's on board and play it. Because when you play Wayfinder, which, right, so that's like the big thing with this deck, is playing Kinku Wayfinder, which is Allegiance, summoned to 1-cost unit, so it's always going to grab you Kennen, right? The only thing that doesn't hit Allegiance is Ezreal in this deck, but that's besides the point. So you're generally going to have multiple Kennens on board. So it's a weird mindset to get into, to know that, like, you can have multiple Kennens on board, you just won't have multiple Kennens in hand ever, because they change to Kennen's Lightning Rush. So one of the goals here is to get the multiple Kennens on board, and you slowly put them back into your hand so that you can shuffle more into the deck and use Wayfinder maybe even a second time. And that's one of the ways, I should say, to summon the 5 Kennens if you're going that route instead of the Dragonling. Like, if you don't, you only draw 1 Eye of the Dragon or something, you just can't quite get there with Dragonlings. That's how you have to go about getting multiple Kennens in there. So Lightning Rush is very similar to Nautilus's Riptide, right? Where it's like only good when you have a Kennen on board. And like when I reviewed Lightning Rush, I didn't think it's a great card. I still don't think it's a great card, but in this deck, it is amazing. You have a Kennen on board, Lightning Rush in hand is great. It's a target, it's 2 damage, it puts Kennen back in your hand. What more can you want? Sonic Wave works great with Kennens and Dragonlings. I've considered putting a second one in here. With a leveled Kennen, it allows you to challenge a unit and force the blocker to get you another Lightning Rush with Kennen's level 2. Not to mention, the extra damage. Use it with a Dragonling, you can pick off a big unit. So that's nothing new. I mean, we see that in Lee Sin all the time. God Willow Seed is probably one of my favorite cards released in this set. If you use this on a Kennen, the ephemeral Kennen that's summoned gets you a Mark of the Storm. Jesus, I can't. There's too many cards with Kennen. It's Mark of the Storm, right? Yeah, Mark of the Storm. So you get a Mark of the Storm when the ephemeral summon. Then the idea is that you recall the ephemeral at some point. So especially if it's level 2, you can attack with the ephemeral. You get a Lightning Rush. Mark of the Storm. See, I'm going to keep doing that. They commit a blocker, let's say. Or maybe they don't because it's ephemeral, right? So they really shouldn't ever be, especially because if you're playing against somebody who knows this deck, they're going to know not to assign a blocker. After you submit the attack, if they assign any blockers, it passes priority back over to you. Then you recall the ephemeral unit. So then now it either forces them to use removal onto an ephemeral Kennen, or, which they probably should, they might as well, because you're going to get that Kennen back into your hand. It acts as the ephemeral because it turns it into a champion spell. Even if it turns back into a champion, it's going to be not ephemeral, right? Because the originating card is not ephemeral. You recall a Dragonling, similarly, it's still going to keep ephemeral because the card itself is ephemeral. Like, it was built that way, right? Kennen does not stock come with ephemeral. So something really important to note there. Super fun card to play with. And then, of course, Concussive Palm, Tail of the Dragon. If you're really trying to wait out drawing Ezreal in some of those longer games, you're going to find yourself having to use the Concussive Palms and actually get the Tail of the Dragon back into your hand. It's one of the reasons why there is a Monastery of Hirana in here. There's one other reason, which we'll go over in a second. Having that one copy for later games allows you to basically have never-ending Tail of the Dragons or Concussive Palms, right? Which is super helpful for the longer games. All right. Things to watch with this deck. Hand size. your hand size will get pretty large sometimes, especially when you have multiple Cannons on board and you're trying to maximize how many Mark of the Storms you get. If you have like 3 Cannons, you can get like 6 in one turn, and it's kind of hard to like, you're probably gonna have more than 4 cards in hand at that point. So you're gonna be playing the Mark of the Storms before you attack, so you free up some hand space or whatever it might be. It's just something to keep an eye on. Protecting your Kennen early is another thing that you're going to want to do with things like Twin Discipline, Notify, Deny. You really shouldn't have too much of a problem protecting Kennen. And again, stalling to find Ezreal is something that you're going to have to be aware of. If you are really late and you see a window to close it out with Elusive, I do recommend doing it, just because, I mean, this deck literally does not win without Ezreal. It can't. You know, so if you have that 2% window to win with a Shadow Assassin with double Twin Disciplines, you might as well go for it. It doesn't happen often, but you'll probably lose otherwise. All right, so what's the nuts draw? So the nuts draw, I almost just killed myself there. The nuts draw is actually Monastery of Harana into Wayfinder. I'm going to show you guys a clip in a second where you get Monastery on 3, you get Wayfinder on 4. That's 2 Cannons, especially if you already had a Kennen on like turn 1 or 2. You are on turn 4 or 5 leveling your Kennen, and you win the game. you win. So I'll show you that clip there in a second. It was actually against a Plunder deck, I believe. So couple cards I do want to touch on, some specific cards. The reason why Monastery is only a 1-of is because if you draw multiple Monastery, it just feels terrible. It bogs down the deck. It is not a card that is needed to win with this deck. This card could not play it, and this deck will still win consistently. It is specifically for the longer games, like I just mentioned, to get multiple concussive palms, or, like I said, if you draw it early, it's ridiculous. Getting a free Sanctuary every single turn is actually pretty insane in this deck if you happen to get it early. If you get it really at any other point in the game, it's not really going to do much for you. Recall, same idea. Multiple of it feels bad, but a 1 mana, a lot of times, like Deny just to like save a Kennen is freaking amazing. And you can kind of afford to play 1-ofs a lot more in this deck because there's so much draw. You know, you have the 3 deep med. We even have Sane in here, which we'll go over in a second. So, you know, you're more likely to draw these on a consistent basis. Like, I see Recall and Sonic Wave all the time. Monastery I haven't seen too much playing this deck, and Homecoming I haven't, but I have seen my 1-ofs a fair amount, so I'm pretty happy with that, especially with these 3 deep meds. Now, Sanin is another draw card. I'm not crazy about this yet. It also helps if you are trying to close things out with like that elusive thing that I had mentioned. Maybe we can take this deck more that route at some point. I've seen people play 2 of these sometimes. The extra draw does help a lot, but I'm not completely sold on this card yet. It feels like it deserves to be in this deck, but I mean, anything else could be good here too. I mean, another, Homecoming or something, who knows? So, we'll see. But with that said, I'm going to show you the clip real quick of like the nuts draw that I had. Actually, maybe I'll do that. I'll do that after. We're going to go through the game quick, the full game that I played, and then we're going to go through that clip of just like crazy opening hand, right? All right, so here we go. We got the first game here versus knowssssss Thresh, which, let's be honest, that's a little bit of a throwback. Rip Atrocity when they changed that card. But so this game, basically what you want to do when you first start the mulligan is you do want to try to find an Eye of the Dragon. In this case, we found 3. So if you do stumble upon something like 3 Eye of the Dragon, you're probably going to be leveling up Kennen with the Dragonlings, potentially. Then again, you could still just level it up with Kennen, which I think is actually what happened in this game. So, but because I have the 3 Dragonlings, I'm not really too worried about sustain. Going up against something like Shadow Isles and Shurima, there's really not a lot they're going to be able to do to get rid of my Eye of the Dragons. There's going to be maybe something like Black Spears I have to be on the lookout for, but I would have, Notify takes care of that, as does Twin Disciplines. So, all in all, we're feeling pretty safe. Every turn, we're going to be able to get these Dragonlings online. Now, a little scared right now just because I don't really have a great way to play 2 spells. We're likely going to go into next turn not having any Dragonlings, which is what you see here. I pass back on 4 mana. The thought here is that I'll probably be using a Twin Disciplines onto one of my Eye of the Dragons to block onto the 3-1, which I think is exactly what I do here. You know, again, not too worried about any sort of removal coming out. They could play a Black Spear after the fact, now that they've had a unit die, but I would have protection. Now, this actually puts me outside of protection now. So this would be an opening for my opponent to play something like Black Spear. I don't think they had it. But again, in this deck, I do want to prioritize getting something like these Canons online or getting this Kinku Wayfinder online. Because I do have this third Eye of the Dragon in hand. So even if I do lose one, I am feeling A-okay. That Vile Feast is actually really big. That was a little scary. Generally speaking, you don't want to be so willy-nilly with the Wayfinders like that. I set myself up to play that Wayfinder and have 0 protection left. I didn't have Nopify. I should have waited to have Nopify mana alongside something like Kinku Wayfinder. Canons are super vulnerable. It's a 2-1. Like, they die to basically everything. So you got to really be aware of what kind of removal your opponent might have. So this is what I was talking about, actually, when we went through the different card interactions. Willow? God, this is going to be rough with these new cards. But it created the ephemeral copy, and then I recalled it to get basically another Kennen shuffled into my deck. This is important, especially when you have multiple Kinku Wayfinders. There will be times where you possibly get your hand bogged down by multiple Kinku Wayfinders, and you're going to have to enable the second one. And you do that by shuffling more Kennen back into your deck. But you can see here, I think we're actually tied with Canons and Dragonlings, FYI, which is interesting. Somebody said Box is actually good tech versus this deck. I disagree with that when you play stuff like Retreat. So, I mean, you retreat. I mean, I guess Nopify doesn't target Box. It would have to be Deny, which feels kind of bad using Deny on a Box. You know, you don't necessarily lose tempo, but it doesn't feel good. But yeah, see, we actually level up our Kennen because of that Retreat. Because we played it reactively, we protected the Kennen, we got it back into our hand, we didn't have any on board, we were able to play one. And the fact that this landmark summons, this Willow, summons another... It's not just recalling and summoning an ephemeral. It summons another one 2 turns later. That is what I think is so broken about that landmark. Like, I think that landmark is actually incredible. Not just... I haven't even experimented with it in other decks. Not just in Kennen, but I think it's going to be great in a lot of other spots, too. I think it might actually... Recall an ephemeral might actually be good now. Just saying. Just throwing that out there. So you can see here, I actually stunned the Thresh because I wanted to save the ephemeral. The idea here, because I'm sitting on so much mana, is, alright, I might be able to get it back to my hand. Now, right now, I don't have anything to get it back to my hand. The Monastery is going to be too slow. It's going to die at the end of the turn. I won't get the Sanctuary till next turn. When I do have a Deep Med, there's a relatively good shot that I'll be able to grab some sort of recall with the Deep Med. There's the Black Spear we've been waiting on pretty much all game. Able to deny it. There's the Retreat. We even would have had Will of Ionia technically to get it back to our hand, which is worth it, I think. Especially at this part in the game where you have so much card advantage ahead of your opponent. So, we get the Surrender. That's what this deck does. It makes the opponent surrender. I mean, what can I say? So, I think they actually surrender in this game too. But, I wanted to show you guys this one quick, because it was essentially the nut straw that you could possibly hope for. So I imagine I basically mulligan everything but God Willow Seedling. That's what it is. God Willow Seedling. Or sorry, not God Willow Seedling. Now I'm confusing that with Monastery of Hirana. We end up drawing Monastery of Hirana. So the first part of this equation is Kinku Wayfinder. Alright? Having Kinku for turn 4 is amazing in this deck. So if you either find a... You'll almost always find a Kinku or a Kennen in the early game. But Kinku on 4 is great. There's the Monastery. Now, right now, we don't have the Dragons, we don't have Canons, so we're basically we're banking mana for the first 2 turns, and then we're playing 3 is when the game starts, right? Turn 3 is when the game starts for us, and we're just going to start setting up. We have the attack token on 3, too, which means we can play this landmark safely and not have to worry about, taking damage to the face or losing too much tempo. And they actually return with the Monkey Idol, which is probably the best thing you could have hoped for instead of playing 2 units. So we take the damage, we're fine, we play Kennen. Now this is where everything gets so ridiculous. If you have Kennen, Monastery of Hirana, and Kinku Wayfinder, you win. You probably win the game. If they can't deal with those cards at the turn they come down, they're screwed. Because at that point, you will have too much protection. I have a Retreat, I have a Nopify, and then when those are gone, I have Refuel and Deep Med. There's just too many tools for me to be able to keep them on board, which is why this is so insane. So we already have Kennen on board. We have a Sanctuary every turn. We can get basically a summon on Kennen every turn. There's still 2 left in our deck. So guess what? I can toss down another, the same Kennen, which was already there in the first place. This is like the 2nd or 3rd time. I think this is the 3rd time. And then the Kinkou Wayfinder, that's 4 and 5. Boom. Leveled up Kennen on turn 5. What do you know? This is like the full dream of this deck realized in what it's supposed to do. And going into a plunder board, this feels insanely powerful, right? Because plunder decks, generally, this is what the board looks like. Everything's like 3 health. Kennen's 3 attack with quick attack, you're golden. Now, the reason I did what I did here is what I mentioned before with the hand size. I had to unload my hand because we got too many. Like, they're going to submit the blockers. We lose 2 Mark of the Storms here because our hand is full. So I had to get those out of my hand. It at least marks all of them, right? And I can now just unload everything onto the Yodel Grifter now. So there's that, I guess. But Nopify on Monster Harpoon, by the way, feels very nice. So you can kind of see how this deck just gets insanely ridiculous. And actually, in this case, I just retreat it. Because why not? I'd rather save my Nopify. With the retreat, too, I end up getting a Kennen's Lightning Rush in hand. Which means it just keeps going and going and going. If I Kennen's Lightning Rush, recall another Kennen, that's going to give me another Kennen's Lightning Rush. Now if I'm able to draw into another Kinkou Wayfinder, boom, the second one's active. Now I get 2 more Kennens, except now they're 3/2 quick attacks, and they get me a whole hell of a lot more every single turn. A lot more Mark of the Storms. So you can see how this just gets ridiculous, right? Absolutely love this deck, and I just wanted to show you guys a quick example of how it can be insane. With the insane starting hand that I just got. Alright, that's it, guys and gals. I love this deck. I think it's super fun. Maybe I get tired of it after a month of everybody playing it and it just becomes the go-to, you know, crazy good deck that everybody's playing, tier 1. Who knows? Maybe it's the return of Karma Ezreal. We all remember and love those days, right? So, but right now, for that matter, it's great. It's fun to play. It feels super powerful when you win with it, and which is obviously that much more fun, of course. And I highly recommend playing this deck if you have accumulated the cards to do so. But hope you guys enjoyed this video. Leave a comment below with any recommendations or any maybe changes, your deck codes, you know, any changes you might make to the deck that I went over in the beginning. Let me know your thoughts and opinions. But as always, everybody, oh, don't forget to like and subscribe and that stuff. That's what I'm supposed to say, right? Anyways, everybody, as always, stay healthy, stay positive. I hope it just works for you, and peace out.